Hello, I first just want to thank you so much for buying the Danni Rose wrap dress sewing pattern. It genuinely makes me so excited to know that there are others out there sewing Danni Rose designs and wearing these dresses for themselves. So thank you so much for making that dream come true. And next, I just wanted to say that please use this video tutorial alongside the written instructions. I personally learn better from watching someone sew videos as well, so I've tried to film it in a way that it is quite relaxed and quite friendly, so I hope that that works well together. But if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can pop me an email or send me a DM on Instagram. I would be more than happy to help. And yeah, I hope you enjoy sewing the dress, and I look forward to seeing any photos. Please send in your photos of your creations. I would love to see them. Start by pinning your shoulder seams and your finished left hand side seam. You're going to leave the right hand side open, and we're going to just overlock those before sewing it together to leave space for the tie. Once you've sewn down on the shoulder seams and down the side seam, you want to go ahead and overlock where you've sewn, as well as the open side. Just overlock either side separately. As you can see, I've overlocked the shoulders, this side, and then these two pieces here. So now we're going to sew down the side seam, and you'll have notches or chalk marks where it will be open. So I'm just going to leave this part here open. So start from the underarm with your 1 centimetre seam allowance and just sew down till you get to that point, and then backtrack, and then go to your other notch, sew down and backtack. Then you want to open it up. You can use an iron or you can use your fingers just to press these seams down. And so just to secure this down, you're going to sew around the hole. So lift your foot and then pivot. Lift and then come back down. So you have a little opening here for your tie to thread through. This is going to be smaller than the tie by 1/2 centimetre. So then just trim your excess threads. You've done that. This is what your opening will look like from that side and then from the other side as well. Okay, so we're going to move on to the binding neckline, but first we want to stay stitch the neckline. So you want to start from here and then stitch all around. This is going to prevent it from stretching and puckering as you sew the binding on. So on a regular stitch, we've got a 1 centimetre seam allowance. Just do that all the way around thin. You don't want to be pushing it or pulling it from the other end as well. And now we're going to attach the binding. So you can use store-bought binding or you can self-make it. I've self-made it so that it matches the dress. What you do to create it is create a pattern piece of paper that's 4 centimetres wide and cut it directly on the bias. To attach the binding, you want your right side facing up and then the right side of your binding facing down. So right sides together just as usual, just so there's excess, and then back tack, place your needle and stitch in the ditch all the way around. Again, because this is a wrap neckline, you don't want to be pulling your dress, just let the fabric sort of feed itself in. Great, so once you've got to the end of the binding, you just want to trim the excess off. And then you want to turn your garment so the wrong side is facing up, and then you're going to sew the binding down. So what I like to do is fold your binding in once. This one's going to be a hidden binding, so it's going to go in over once and then over again. So you don't see the binding at all from the outside. And then sew that down all the way around. So you want the inside of your foot to be on the edge of the binding, so your sewing as close to the edge as possible. So just line the edge of your inner foot up with that. Once you're finished, this will be the inside of your garment where your binding is sitting, and then from the outside it'll look like this. So before we go and press that down, we're just going to get the sleeves ready to sew in. Pure bodice aside for now, and then grab your 2 sleeves and sew down the side seams of your sleeves. Once you've sewn down the side seams, go ahead and overlock those. I like to hem my sleeves before I insert them to the bodice, so turn them in the right way. And the sleeves have a 1 centimeter double fold hem on them, so go ahead and turn them in the right way, fold it over once, 1 centimeter, and then again. If you're still a beginner sewer, it might be a good idea to press this before sewing it down. One down, then on to the next. Now we're going to sew the sleeves inside the bodice. So I like to have my sleeves in the right way, turn your bodice in the wrong way, and then pop the sleeve inside the garment. Make sure you've got your back notches matching your back bodice notches. Tuck them in, and I start at the underarm seam, put a pin in there, and then make your way to the shoulder seam. Match the notch with the seam, and then pop a pin in there. So you're working with the sleeve on the top and the bodice on the bottom, and just putting a couple of pins in. Now go ahead and sew the sleeve in, and then you want to do the same to the other side. When I'm sewing the sleeve in, I also like to work with the sleeve on top and the bodice underneath. I just find then you get more control of the sleeve. Perfect, that's one in, so go ahead and do the same to the other side. Once both sleeves are in, you just want to go and overlock both seams, and then we're going to give it a press. That is your bodice part done. So you've got your sleeves in, your binding on, you've got your opening on the right hand side, and ready to move on to the skirt part. Before you start the skirt, actually, let's do the ties. So you've got 2 ties. Fold it in half, maybe pop a couple of pins, one in the end, one in the middle, just so that when you're sewing, you're not accidentally pulling on one layer, creating puckering. Right sides together, and then start at the straight edge, leave that open, and then just go straight down with your 1 centimeter seam allowance. Great, and when you get to the end, you're going to come to the angled point, so just take that 1 centimeter up and then lift your foot, pivot the machine, and then come back down and backtack to finish. Just trim the excess here. Oh. And then do the same to the other. Now, to turn your tie inside out, this is quite possibly one of my favorite sewing hacks. You want to take the edge that was closed, so that was your angled end. Use your fingers to push it in a little bit, like that, so you've got somewhere to rest the chopstick. Pop it in, and then I like to press it against my chest, and then just literally do that the whole way until it pops out the end. And then hold on tight to that, remove your chopstick, and just pull it all the way through. It's like magic. So when you're ready to press the tie, just make sure, which I didn't do, is to get your chopstick and really push that corner out. The chopstick's great because it's not sharp, so it's not going to push through, and just make sure your angle's nice and clean like that. And then the best hack I ever learnt for pressing ties is to grab a bowl of water, have that handy with you to dip your fingers in, and what that's going to do is it's really going to help you grip the fabric. Great, so now both of your ties have been pressed and sewn, and you just want to pop these to the side while we move on to the skirt part. So place your pocket bag at your 3 centimeter down notch there. You can pin it if you like, and then you just want to sew that down, 1 centimeter seam allowance, back tacking from the top of the pocket bag to the bottom. Do that to the same. Do the same to the front and the backs. So I just want to show you. You've got your backs here with the pocket bag sewn on either side, and then you've got 2 fronts. So the pocket bag on that one side, and then the other pocket bag. Making sure it's opposites. You're not accidentally sewing it to the same side for the front, and then just go ahead and overlock that section only. Once you have overlocked where you've just sewn for your pocket bags on the front side, you want to go ahead and press that down so your overlocking seam is out towards the pocket bag. Press it down, and then we're going to come and stitch in here. On your front pieces where you have just pressed your pocket bag down, you want to come in and tack it down. So make sure your inside of your foot is running in line with that seam there. So we're sewing, basically sewing that seam to the pocket bag to secure it in place. You want to do that on both sides, so I'm getting to my other. Now you want to sew the front and the back skirt panels together. Lay your back down, and then you want to place your front over top right sides together. Place your first pin at the top of the pocket bag, and then place your second pin at the base of the other pocket bag here. And then place a couple of pins just to hold the pocket bag in place for when you're coming around the curve. Then you want to take the hem of the skirts and then pin those together as well. And then I like to just find a halfway point and place one more pin sort of in the center anywhere. Cool, and then start sewing. So as you start sewing, it's a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Go forward. When you come to the top of the pocket bag, you want that to come 1 centimeter further over. Lift your foot, pivot your garment around, and then go all the way around the pocket bag. So once you've gone around the pocket bag and then you've come up, you will stop your needle in line with that seam there. Lift your foot and pivot the garment around so that you continue going down the side seam with your 1 centimeter seam allowance. Your pocket's all done. Now we just want to go ahead and overlock down both side seams. You're going to come down and around just as you did sewing the pocket on, but with the overlocker. Just to show you what that looks like, I've come in with the overlocker, gone down the side seam, around the pocket bag, and then back all the way down the side seam on both sides. And now we get to move on to gathering. This is my favorite hack, the gathering hack, but if you prefer to hand gather, go ahead and do that as per usual, but I find this way much faster. It saves me so much time, especially when I'm sewing so many dresses per day. So to do that technique, you want to turn your stitch length up as tight as it can go, and then you also want to adjust your tension. So most of you will be on a domestic machine, which I find the number 7 works well, or you can pinch the top thread as well and do it visually. Again, if you're a beginner sewer or you don't feel comfortable with this technique, go ahead and hand gather along the waistline to match the length of the bodice. So very important here, we need to start 2 centimeters over. You might just want to chalk that over just so you know where to start and where to finish, because that's your sort of like front seam there at the top of the bodice. So I'm going to come in, back tack to start as always. So as you can see, I'm just pinching my top thread here. Again, you can turn your tension up and doing a 1 centimeter gather line the whole way along the top edge of the skirt. And you can just see it's just so beautifully gathering out the back. You can even sample this on, you know, like a scrap piece of fabric a couple of times if you like. Once you get the hang of it, trust me, it is the easiest way to gather. You're never going to want to go back to hand gathering unless you simply just enjoy hand gathering. I used to, but the more you sew and the more you hand gather, the less you want to do it. Once you get to the end, stop at 2 centimeters and don't back tack or have the automatic cut off. Simply just lift the foot, and what that'll allow you to do is if you need to wriggle it around, you've got this extra piece of thread here to just give you you know, a bit of space to play around. I like to have it so your skirt is the right way up. Take your bodice, place it on top, right sides together, and then first pin at the side seams. And then once in the center, always pin on your gathering side, because when you're sewing, you want your gathered side, which is the skirt, to be facing upwards. And then you want to, at the edge, and then once in the center, okay, so now you have your bodice pinned to your skirt. Ooh. Just like that. Enough pins to secure it in place. And now you want to start sewing with this. You want the bodice underneath the skirt, so the gathers are on top. That way, if you need to move the gathers around it all, you can. So first things first is make sure you turn your stitch length back to 2.5 or whatever your preferred stitch length is. And just get in there and sew it down with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Cool, so we've got that's all sewn together. You just want to overlock the seam that you've just sewn. Overlocked your waistline seam. This is where it gets really exciting. The dress is coming together. Okay, your dress is starting to come to life. We've got it all sewn together. All we need to do is attach the ties to the sides and then sew down these seams here, and then we're going to hem it. But this is what it'll be looking like so far. Okay, so now we are going to attach the ties. What you want to do is, I like to just use your fingers to press the waist seam down. Make sure that that's flush. And then take your tie and just kind of watch a little bit closely here. So first you want to fold that over once, like that, and then place your tie in line with that fold and then fold it over again. So your tie is basically, it is sandwiched in between your fold. So see how that's folded over once and then fold it over again. Then lift your foot up and tack it down, and then continue going the whole way down the front seam. So once you've gone the whole way down, you want to then flip your garment. So the right side is facing up and the tie is coming outwards like that. And what we're going to do is sew along the edge here just to hold the tie in place. That's what it would look like upside down. And then do the same to the other side. When you're doing in the other side, I find it easier to always have the wrong side of your garment facing up. So for the other side, you will be working starting from the hem of the dress upwards to the bodice. Fold as you did on the last one. And then once you get closer to the bodice, that's when we'll pop the tie in and tack it down. So as you can see now, we're coming closer to where we need to pop the tie in. So just have that ready near you. Usually when I get to about that point, I like to pop it in place. So again, you're folding it over once and then twice, and you're placing it under so it's just sandwiched in there. And then turn your garment so the right side's up. Lay the tie out, tack it down. Just a little progress vid of how it's going to be looking. So you've got your ties on either side, which look great. You've sewn down the front seam, and all we need to do now is hem the dress, and it's all done. So for the hem of the dress, it's just a 1 centimeter double fold. So go ahead and do that. Unfortunately, my video cut out, so you don't get to see me finishing the hem or pressing the dress, but that's all you need to do and your wrap dress is done. Here's a wee video of me wearing the dress. I'm currently 19 weeks pregnant, so here's a little peep at my bump, and I hope you've enjoyed. Please reach out if you've got any questions. Bye!